we still using a 20-year-old plan for forest management?
Box of Rain is at risk of getting auctioned off at the end of November. And many people have submitted public comments. Over 120 people submitted public comments in support of, or in opposing logging Box of Rain, which is a lot of people. Usually these timber sales get no public comments.
Todd Donovan. I am chair of the Whatcom County Council. Been on council for 6 years now. I think I'm finishing my 6th year. Used to chair the Natural Resource Committee, which has kind of the original jurisdiction for some of our land use conservation programs. Not claiming to be a forestry expert, but I can give you some perspective on what the council's been hearing about these issues.
We have the saprotrophic, we've got the mycorrhizal, and then we have one more mushroom type that's right here.
Is it parasitic?
Yes! Yes! It is! Nice.
So when we say legacy forests, it's a term that means that it's not quite old growth, but it has the potential to have old growth characteristics. And these are forests that were logged prior to 1945. And that's a significant year because that's sort of when industrial forestry practices shifted over to clear cutting and turning forests into plantations.
Oh, that's a nice piece of wood right there.
Yeah, it smells great.
No knots in it.
Do you know about the timber sale?
Which one? This should have been one right here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why the heck they didn't do something with it.
How do we get DNR more integrated with folks locally who have a different vision of how forest land should be managed? And I don't know, but I know the same thing's going on in Jefferson County and Thurston County right now, where and we're also, as a county, we're acquiring forest lands. We're acquiring more lands from private. So we've got the DNR land reconveyed. That's thousands of acres. We're looking at potentially thousands of acres in the South Fork Valley. How, as a county, do you manage forestry? We're going to be holding 15,000 acres of forestry or more, and the city's got a lot of acreage. How do we work, and that's us, like how do we work with DNRs having sustainable management of these things to get them to be mature, functioning forests rather than just monocrop plantation stuff. That's the stuff we're trying to figure out right now. Everybody who was concerned about Box of Rain, stand up. And it was really, so even if they didn't all come up and spend 3 minutes, like, we could see that. So we know there's people out there. But if they want to come up and speak, it's like, okay, you're part of. And I think this was when we had some other hearing that was just going forever. So by the time we got to open session where those folks could say, here we all are, stand up in solidarity, half of them had to leave because it was getting so late.
We know that these older legacy forests can hold up to 50% more water than plantation forests. So these older forests are incredibly significant when it comes to releasing water in the summer and then holding water in the winter when we experience things like floods. So who here remembers the flood that we experienced, right? So biodiversity and wildlife habitat are incredibly important. Also, we know that trees that are 80 to 150 years old are better at sequestering and storing carbon compared to any other age tree.
For my entire life, the forest which Box of Rain is a part of has been growing slowly and constantly. When I turned 5, the oldest trees in Box of Rain were 100 feet tall, and the youngest were just saplings. Every year, more families of birds came to make homes in the canopy. The sword ferns turned brown and then green again when the sun came, and the mitochondrial networks beneath the soil became more complex and interwoven. Today, I turned 21, and the tall cedars and firs are 100 feet. The understory is thick and diverse, and the soil is rich from the many small lifetimes that it's absorbed. If Box of Rain were to be clear-cut, it would take over 100 years for the forest to reach the state it's in now. If it is not replanted as plantation forest, and if the conditions of our uncertain world are suitable for that kind of growth, all of us in this room will likely be gone by then, and our children will all be adults. Almost the entire coast of the Pacific Northwest used to be a part of an old-growth ecosystem. The room we stand in today could have been a grove of cedar, a riparian marsh, or a thicket of sword fern. Slowly, with the imposition of settlers to the area, and consequently the mass harvesting of timber, only about 14% of old and untouched forests remain in Washington. Box of Rain is what is called a legacy forest. The term refers to a forest logged 80 to 120 years ago that was not reseeded to become plantation. Box of Rain and legacy forests like it are viable to become the old-growth forest for our children that we haven't had the opportunity to experience, if we don't allow them to be clear-cut by the Department of Natural Resources. In this stage in the climate crisis, we can't afford to keep clear-cutting our last remaining old forests, and it's completely irresponsible of the DNR and the state of Washington to make these obviously profit-driven decisions about state land, which all Washingtonians should have a say in the future of. I feel really grateful that the County Council wrote a letter earlier this year urging the DNR to cancel the vested timber sale, and I voted to do so again regarding Box of Rain. Cutting a forest is not inconsequential. The money made by cutting Box of Rain cannot buy back 90 years of slow and persistent growth, and I cannot buy back time that may be lost from my own life or the life of my children due to climate change.
Current thing I think you're hearing about is like the Box of Rain sale, which is in another watershed. It's in a river watershed, not our drinking watershed. So we're getting pressure to write a similar kind of letter to DNR opposing that sale, and we haven't because there's a bigger issue going on about trying to get that into the next phase of DNR's carbon sequestration thing. So the Box of Rain thing is overlapping with the previous timber sale we opposed, and I think the council's kind of struggling to come up with like, well, what's a cohesive policy that links our ability to speak out against a sale in the watershed to a broader policy about what, because the Box of Rains are pretty small, but these are both pretty small sales. I mean, that was like about 40 acres, the one we're talking about up on the Middle Fork. And it's part of a broader contiguous group of parcels that could potentially be part of the next phase of DNR's carbon project. So that's a role council hopefully will be thinking about. Like, we're hearing from the responsible forestry folks, the Sierra Club, just in the last couple of days about can we get the Runstad parcels, those pieces up on the Middle Fork, into DNR's program, so they're counting as carbon sequestration rather than timber harvest revenue projects. The Lands Commissioner has opened up a statewide project to designate DNR lands in various counties as valued and maintained for sequestering carbon rather than for timber harvest. And Whatcom County, in the first phase, I don't have my notes with me, had 2 pretty large parcels, 1,000 acres plus. And this is when I was talking about like DNR getting beyond just the revenue. But I think, again, it's like, well, maybe there's revenue and we can sell credits in these. There are trees that will not be harvested that will be sequestering carbon, and DNR can get revenue by, people who need to mitigate their carbon footprint would buy those credits as offsets.
in a class. We're just making a video on like just the local forest around here and people that interact with it, and yeah, through Western.
How many people dump garbage up here? Junk. I mean, even cars. You know, they steal cars, trash them like the one down at the bottom. There's always a car somewhere up here, and just bags of garbage.
We have a goal in our comprehensive land use plan to preserve X number of acres for agriculture, and kind of parallel ideas that we want to keep X number of acres in commercial forestry, productive forestry. And you know, they don't see us actively trying to move away from reducing ag land. We go out our way to protect ag land and buy development rights and zone it restrictively. So if we are then at the same time lobbying to take productive forest land out of production and lower that number, that they see that as kind of hypocritical in terms of how we're treating agriculture versus how we might be treating forestry. It's small, what we're talking about here, but the larger issues, or what I was just mentioning earlier, like how it's not just that 140-acre parcel, that there's a lot of parcels out in that Middle Fork area that could be contiguous, maintained as contiguous legacy forest or carbon project forest. So that's, you know, then you scale it up to something where that could have much larger ecological benefits.
Rusula and lacteris mushrooms. So what we have here, so we've got the mycorrhizal fungi. Does anyone know any other types of fungi and how they grow, how they interact in the world? All mushrooms are decomposers, but the mycorrhizal fungi are more like the neurons of the forest. They're sending impulses. They're telling the hyphae of the mycorrhizal and the roots where the nutrients need to go. Has anyone ever read Finding the Nether Tree?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, so you're familiar with this idea that there's this, people call it the wood wide web, but I don't really like that we always put these human words on nature. Like, we don't have to be so human-centric. So it is this interconnected system that is under the forest.